Hey there, Alex Kidman here, and today I'm taking a look at the Motorola Razr 40 Ultra, also known as the Razr Plus in some markets because marketing people have to market, I guess. And look, for the longest time with these small flip phones, I sort of thought the technology was kind of neat, but they didn't really grab me. I like the larger foldable style phones, the ones that start as a reasonable sized phone and then become little tablets in effect. But these little compact ones, they were sort of cute, they were sort of stylish, but I couldn't really justify the price for the style alone, and their external displays were just too small to be really all that useful. The Razr 40 Ultra, though, has changed my opinion, and it's changed it markedly within a fairly short review period because of the way that you use that external display. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's get into what makes this particular phone particularly special. Unfolded, you might not actually pick the Razr 40 Ultra as a foldable phone at all because it just looks like a regular, slightly large phone with a 6.9-inch 165Hz display. It's a nice looking thing, but then you probably notice that there's a small crease in the middle, and that's because, yeah, this is a foldable phone. It'll fold down into a compact shape. And the big selling point here really is the 3.6-inch 144Hz capable AMOLED display on the outside. And this is a bit of a game changer, really, because it actually changes up what you can do while the phone is folded up. And while in the past you'd usually have like a small number of widgets and just notifications that you could get there, or maybe a tiny little sliver of a window to try helplessly to shoot selfies with, now this is a full-fledged display. Yes, look, there are widgets, there are different clocks you can have, but you can also set just about any Android app to run in it, and that makes a big difference. I'll get into that in the performance section. Motorola has also done something interesting with the durability of the Razr 40 Ultra. So if you look at the competing Z Flip series from Samsung, they're IPX8 rated up to the Z Flip 4. We don't know about the Z Flip 5 at the time of recording. And that means that, yeah, look, full water immersion, they should survive, but there's no dust protection. The Razr 40 Ultra is IP52. And that means it's not quite as water resistant. You really should not dunk it in water, but a little bit of light rain should not particularly fuss it. But it has been tested much more extensively against dust and sand and grit getting into it. I don't want to damage a phone any day of the week, but I think I prefer that approach. I think I prefer a phone which is going to be more generally durable to one that's just more water resistant. Let me know what you think in the comments below about that. In terms of the cameras, it always gets tricky talking about cameras on foldables because the nature of folding, of course, means that the rear cameras are sometimes the front cameras and the selfie camera is sometimes completely obscured. That's totally the case for this phone. You get three sensors: a primary 12 megapixel sensor, a 13 megapixel ultra-wide sensor, and then a 32 megapixel selfie sensor, which is, of course, on that larger internal display and out of view if you've got it folded down. The issue here is one that's not new to the world of flip foldables. I've yet to be wowed by any of them, and the Razr 40 Ultra didn't really change my opinion there much to speak of. Look, it's useful to have that larger external display when you're using the dual lenses of the selfie cameras, for sure. And you can also use it to show silly animations to your kids to try and get them to smile when you're taking photos of them. That's not bad. It's just that for the money at this price point, you can get a better camera. And you should have that as a consideration in your mind. If camera quality is important to you for this kind of money, you can do better. This is not bad, but it's definitely playing second fiddle. What about performance? So this is where it gets interesting because Motorola has, with all of its Razr foldables, always played a generation behind the cutting edge to keep costs down, basically. And it's exactly what it's done here. It runs on the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chip, otherwise known as 2022's premium Qualcomm offering. It's the same play they did actually with the Think phone as well that I reviewed recently. For the Razr 40 Ultra, it's paired up with 8GB of RAM and 256GB of onboard storage, running Android 13 at the time of review. And look, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 isn't a slouch, it isn't a terrible processor, but comparatively, if you look at benchmarks and things like that, yeah, look, this is not quite as fast as you can get at this price point. And it basically means it pairs up fairly well, actually, with the Z Flip 4, last year's Samsung foldable. It seems likely, although not confirmed, that Samsung might opt for the Gen 2 Snapdragon 8 for the Z Flip 5. We'll have to wait and see a couple of weeks to confirm on that one. But do those benchmarks really matter? Well, look, maybe, maybe not. The reality here in the premium space is, and I've said this so many times before, all of these flagship phones have these incredible engines in them, and there's not really too many Android apps that are going to tax it to an appreciable degree. Does this benchmark slower than, say, a Galaxy S23 phone? Yeah, it does, and that's not a surprise. Are you going to notice that in day-to-day usage? I don't know that you are, really. What really excited me here, of course, was that external display, was the fact that it can run full Android apps. Now, does every app run properly in such a small display? No. I mean, most games are pretty ordinary at best. Just because I could, I ran some Xbox Cloud gaming through it, just to see how it would run. And look, it runs, and with an external controller, it's sort of workable. It's certainly not the ideal way to do this. Where it's a heck of a lot more useful, where it's got actual functional use, is for things like web browsing or email or messaging or social media, because you can really quickly scroll through those things without having to unfold the phone at all. And I found this super useful. I was really genuinely surprised at how often I'd pull the phone out of my pocket, but I would not need to unfold it, because I could just quickly get what I needed to get done and get it back in my pocket. It actually lowered my screen time, which I did not expect in the least. It's a really, really good, useful feature, especially because it's not just widgets. They could have locked it down to just widgets. They didn't do that. It's basically any Android app you want to push there. They do warn you when you're doing it, hey, look, this might not run so well, and they're not lying. It is a bit hit and miss, but it's a great inclusion, and it's really the hero feature of this phone. What about battery life? So these flip foldables all have the same problem. There's only so much space for batteries because you've got to actually put a hinge in somewhere. In the case of the Razr 40 Ultra, it runs from a 3,800 milliamp hour sealed battery. Not huge by modern Android standards, but very much on par with other flip phones. And generally speaking with these flip phones, I've not been super impressed with battery life, with one exception, and that was, in fact, the predecessor to this phone. The Razr 2022 tested very well for me in battery life terms, and I was keen to see what this could do. So I ran it through my standard YouTube test. You'll find the results on my site, and it did well. Not quite as well as the Razr 2022, in fact, but well ahead of anything you could get out of Samsung. I don't have Oppo figures for their Find N2 Flip because unfortunately they've just not sent me a phone to review, but in terms of good battery life, yeah, this has got it. It will manage a day under most usage circumstances, and that's really quite nice. Equally nice is that Motorola still supplies a charger in the box, with a 33-watt charger supplied. In fact, only does up to 30 watts wired charging. It also supports wireless charging, although that is a fair bit more limited, just 5 watts. So it's going to take a while if you need to wirelessly charge this particular beast. So is it worth buying? Look, at its $14.99 Australian price point, it presents an absolute challenge to Samsung's Z Flip 4 for sure. And if I had to pick just between those two, it'd be the Razr 40 Ultra all the way and all the time. Right now, at the time of recording, the Razr 40 Ultra is the best small flip foldable on the market, thanks to the way that external display works. But if current rumours are accurate, it may not have that space for long, because we know the probably called Z Flip 5 is coming, and putting those two head-to-head is going to be really kind of interesting. It's also worth noting that alongside the Razr 40 Ultra, Motorola's also got the new Razr 40. I'm testing that right now. Now, that doesn't have a full external display. It's a bit more like the older phones, but it's also $400 cheaper. And that's a really compelling proposition in its own right. Stay tuned for that review. Anyway, that's my take on the Motorola Razr 40 Ultra. What do you think? Got any questions? Anything you want to know? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe.